The Max Blumenthal speech, which I think is very powerful. For those who are not aware, Max Blumenthal actually spoke at the University of Massachusetts, the flagship campus here in Amherst, and he spoke to these students. It's called The Occupation Comes Home. This is really good, and there's some funny parts as well. Let's dive in.
This narrative was necessary not only to justify the billions of dollars of aid extracted from us and given to Israel, but to paper over the influence of Israel's domestic cutouts and its influence over our institutions. We would just shrug it off as shared values. Hey, this influence is actually positive. There's nothing unusual here. And so we're now at a point where Americans, and particularly the core constituencies of the Democratic Party, see the real Israel that has always been concealed from us. It's the Israel that I wrote about in my book, Goliath, which was sort of the product of 5 years of trips in and out of Israel, Palestine, particularly going into Jewish-Israeli society. This was between the years of 2009 or 2008, 2009, and 2013, 2014. And what I saw was a society that was primed for genocide. And that was my warning to America as we bankrolled that society and granted it with total impunity, showed it that there was no consequence for what it was preparing to do and for the indoctrination of so many Jewish Israelis into this militarized system.
So Max Blumenthal was one of the journalists, investigative journalists that did give people this warning years ago, right? So way before October 7th, himself, Abby Martin, I know Anya Parambil as well has talked about this. Dan Cohen, remember Max Blumenthal and Dan Cohen actually had a documentary about this, again, years ago. So the warning was always there. I think the struggle sometime is just getting the information to the people. So I think more people know who Max Blumenthal is today than they did a couple of years ago. But here we are again, right? So there have been journalists, investigative journalists that have been to Gaza that tried to forewarn people what Israel was trying to do. So we always have to remember that some people just started talking about this October 7th, and there are some of us that were talking about this years ago. In fact, the first year I started this show, I was talking about Israel and Gaza. So always remember the people who just jumped on this bandwagon after October 7th and completely felt like it wasn't an important issue prior to that.
Now here we are after the killing of some 40,000 people. There's so many undocumented dead in Gaza under the rubble. We don't know how many there are, but we're seeing mass graves revealed almost every day.
Yep.
These are tokens of the real Israel, which has failed in Gaza to achieve its two main military objectives, defeating Hamas and liberating its so-called hostages, captives, and prisoners of war. Many of them are soldiers. And so what it's done is resorted to the industrial slaughter of children in order to satiate the bloodlust of a hyper-indoctrinated population that was humiliated on October 7th. It could not accept the latest ceasefire that Hamas accepted for its own political reasons. One, the linchpin of Israel's ruling coalition are two of the biggest fanatics in Israeli society who represent the incipient Jewish nationalist force which will soon take control of the entire government, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, both disciples of the late American fascist rabbi Meir Kahane, whose nephew just attacked a Gaza encampment, ramming through protesters with his car. There's a direct connection. If Netanyahu had agreed to that ceasefire, these two characters, who control a total of just 4 to 5 seats in the Knesset, would have brought the ruling coalition down in a second.
So that part right there, I think, is really important because people say like this would all be over if Netanyahu would have just agreed to the ceasefire. But then you have to also remember the other people that are a part of the Likud, how you say it, the Likud party, that, and some of them are even more crazier than Netanyahu is, if you've seen some of their speeches on social media. So the entire party would have to be dismantled. But in doing so, even if you dismantle the party, you still have Zionism. So you have to remove Zionism. You have to remove that ideology, because as long as that is still ingrained in people, which, by the way, it's hard for people to shake that and change their mind about it, especially if you're taught that way since birth. As long as that is ingrained in Israelis in Israel, we can still have those problems later on with a different political party. So that's important for people to hear.
They need the war to continue. The entire war cabinet has elected to invade Rafah. It's happening before our eyes. We're seeing people be slaughtered at an increasingly high rate because it's a conurbation of 1.5 million war refugees, mostly living in tents, mostly to the west of the city. And they have nowhere to go. Inside Israel, if there's any resistance to this invasion, it's coming from people who are concerned correctly that the hostages will be killed because they only care about the lives of Jewish Israelis. There's no concern for the lives of Palestinians. There's over 80% Jewish Israeli support for this invasion within Jewish Israeli society. However, they're divided on the issue of the hostages. And what many are saying correctly is that the hostages will be killed as an extension of the Hannibal Directive that we saw enacted on October 7th in order to deny Hamas political leverage. If they kill all the hostages, Hamas has no bargaining leverage, no ability to negotiate. That's how deep the culture of killing is.
So they are willing to forego the hostages in order to prove a point. And we've seen this time and time again where there were multiple opportunities for them to retrieve the hostages and they have been against it. Like multiple times we've seen the IDF kill their own their own hostages, right? That were waving the white flag. There were 3 of them. So again, I don't know if I can stress this enough, but it was very clear to me from day one, I said this, that they did not care about getting those hostages back. Get this, folks? They are willing to let their own people die to prove a point. That is sick.
They will kill their own in order to destroy Hamas and complete what was begun in 1948. This is an existential war for Israel. The siege of Gaza enacted almost 20 years ago, and all of the impending military rampages that we've seen since then were designed to preserve Zionism according to the logical contours of Zionism, whose survival is predicated on the violent engineering of a Jewish demographic majority. That's something that none of the leaders of Israel would deny. Arnon Sofer, he's not particularly well known, but he's an important figure in that he helped design the siege as a demographer at Tel Aviv University. And he distilled the essential logic of Zionism when he said in 2004 in an interview with the Jerusalem Post, when 2.5 million people live in a closed-off Gaza, the pressure at the border will be awful. So if we want to remain alive, we have to kill and kill and kill all day, every day. That is the logic we're seeing play out before our eyes. So this week, the vice president of Netanyahu's Likud party, Shimon Boker, said there are no uninvolved civilians in Gaza, and then directly echoed Arnon Sofer from 20 years ago. You have to go in and kill and kill and kill. And we've heard that from so many of the Israeli leaders. These are not like aberrations or fanatics. They are distilling the logic of Zionism as applied to the reality today in Israel-Palestine. What decent person could possibly, who knows the facts? I mean, you all know the facts, or most of you. I mean, those of you who are Zionist infiltrators don't, but the most of you. What decent person who knows the facts could possibly support a country that needs to commit genocide in order to survive?
You can't. As a decent person, that's the thing. You can't support it. It's just, I don't understand how people can continue to make excuses for Israel at this point in time. How can you still defend this? How can you still defend this behavior unless you inherently believe that you are superior, unless you inherently believe in Zionism, in that type of supremacy, then you can make excuses for Israel killing Palestinian kids, killing Palestinian civilians. You can excuse it if you believe in Zionism. That is why Zionism is so incredibly dangerous. We can remove Netanyahu. He can resign. But if the party still exists, you'll have still issues there where some of those people are even more crazier than he is. You can remove the party, but as long as Zionism is still at the root of it all, you will still have these issues just with different people in leadership.
I mean, that's pretty much what this movement all comes down to, this uprising all comes down to. And so more and more Americans are joining it. And it's clear that as they join it from within elite institutions like academia, that America's mask of liberal democracy has to be peeled back again and again and again, layer after layer, in order to maintain a special relationship with a foreign apartheid state 5,000 miles away called Israel. This is, I mean, what? Unprecedented waves of police violence. What? How many cops were here last night? 130 arrests, 125 cops. Fashion Institute of Technology last night, 300 cops for something like 30 to 40 protesters. A Bearcat smashing into Columbia University's Hamilton Hall. A cop discharging his handgun. Just full-on brutality. But it's not just that, it's political repression. The First Amendment is being systematically rolled back in order to protect a foreign state. This is exactly what President George Washington warned about in his farewell address, when he warned of a passionate attachment to a foreign country which would corrode America from within. So you don't.
This is also what I want to add this to. I'm glad he mentioned that, because also when you talk about the founding fathers, I want people to know the founding fathers also did not believe in having political parties. They had warned that this would be an issue because people would most likely side with their party over their actual beliefs. And they feared that this would be an issue. Now we got to say a lot of other things, about the founding fathers. But that point there that Max brought up about George Washington, that's very important.
You don't have to be a radical. You could be an American nationalist and be disgusted by what's happening. The U.S. is corroding its own image, its own carefully crafted image, its own as an exceptionalist shining city on a hill, as Ronald Reagan called it. This is the source of the soft power that undergirds American imperialism and allows America to export its political project abroad. It is corroding it in order to accommodate the imperatives, the genocidal imperatives of Zionism, and everyone in the world can see it.
And for those who are conservatives that say they're more of a Reagan conservative, remember some of the things that Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan had no problem, standing up to Israel. He had no problem saying, oh, nope, I'm not going to send you any more weapons because you are bombing the hell out of Lebanon and it's looking really bad. And people are starting to turn on you. You are losing support. So I'm not going to send you any more weapons and aid. You cannot continue to bomb Lebanon. Ronald Reagan did that. A conservative president. Here we are, 2024, and we can't get a Democrat to do that. Does this make sense to you people? Does that go to show you just how corrupt our government has become over the decades? How much more money has poured in to electoral politics by corporations and corporate interests in Wall Street? It's bizarre to me. It's just bizarre to me. And it's gotten to the point now where a lot of people say, oh, it's the radical left who, want this war to end. No. You can even talk to some conservatives. Even they're not feeling this. If you actually get out there and talk to people, forget what Fox News says. Forget what CNN says. They're paid to read you a script. You can go talk to people for free on the street. Even some conservatives are opposing what Israel is doing. Israel is losing support across the board.
Except in Germany. And this is not something new. It's something I've been covering, been writing about, and you all, many of you for much longer have been witnessing this process. It played out under Trump. It played out under every other president. Obama may have forestalled the inevitable, even though he oversaw more disproportionate force against Palestinians than any previous president. But this is part of a historical process. But now it's reached sort of its culmination under the president who, under who I call President Puddin'brain. Joe Biden, who is hailed for his decency at the White House Press Correspondents Association dinner. Completely delusional. Who is Joe Biden? Is he, what is Joe Biden? Who controls him? No, that's perhaps, he's had he's gotten some good work done. I might benefit from whoever did his hair at some point. But we're not here to make fun of, we're not here to mock the looks of Biden. The reality is Biden, okay, he started out as a right-wing Democrat who opposed school desegregation. He comes from that background. He wound up at a fairly young age on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And in 1982, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee had a meeting with then Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, the founder of the Likud party, sort of the godfather to Benjamin Netanyahu, who would eventually become a junior minister. And Ronald Reagan and the Reagan administration was actually furious at Menachem Begin for invading Lebanon. Reagan called this invasion and the civilian casualties caused by Israel a Holocaust. Those are his words. Yep. Everyone on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee was furious at Begin. They were worried about actually what it would do to U.S. imperial interests in the Middle East, including getting the oil. Biden was the lone exception on the Foreign Relations Committee. He stood up in a private session, this was reported by the New York Times at the time, in 1982, and told Begin, you should go in there with full force and not be afraid to kill women and children. I would do the same thing. So that was...
I told you, Joe Biden has always been this way. He's a warmonger. That question about his hair, I thought that was kind of funny because I did notice it over the years. Joe Biden was losing his hair and then all of a sudden he has more hair. So I don't know, maybe he went through some type of, like hair treatment or whatever, but I noticed that too. Also, his teeth all of a sudden became really straight and really white. My mom was like, those aren't his teeth. My mom was like, I don't think those are his teeth.
As a young Joe Biden, and over the course of his career, Joe Biden, who said that if Israel didn't exist, we would have to create it, very revealing comment, has taken in more donations from AIPAC-related donors than any active U.S. politician. There are others who are retired who took in more, but Joe Biden took in the most. And that's who he's turning to for his re-election bid. And that is why he accused you all of blatant anti-Semitism. That is why on Holocaust Remembrance Day, he accused Hamas of ancient desires to kill Jews. And if anyone knows about ancient desires, it's Joe Biden. In January, Joe Biden broke all fundraising records with a $42 million fundraising haul. And it was purely through the sheer force of his charisma and mental acuity that he did so. No, it was actually because he took in a large percentage of that at the home of someone named Haim Saban, a Hollywood mogul who is one of the top individual donor to Biden, to Bill Clinton, to Hillary Clinton, and to Barack Obama, and who said, I am a one-issue guy, and my issue is Israel.
See, and that right there is something that should give people pause because, again, everyone keeps talking about put America first. But if somebody is telling you they're the top donor, they're telling you that they're putting Israel first. Nah, bruh. That is a no for me. And we need to think about that when people say that. Like, why would you, what do you mean? What are you talking about?
He's a literal Israel firster of Israeli heritage. His wife, Cheryl Saban, got a vanity position as UN liaison under Barack Obama because he donated so much money to Obama. She is and no offense to Playboy bunnies or anyone, but she met him when she was a Playboy bunny. She did not have a career in diplomacy, is all I'm saying. So this is it. This is what it all comes down to. Biden is controlled by figures like Haim Saban, just as Donald Trump is controlled by figures like Sheldon Adelson, who's not even alive, but who controls much of the Republican Party through his widow, Miriam Adelson, and the Sheldon and Miriam Adelson Foundation.
And remember, his widow actually held a fundraiser recently with RFK Jr., right? So those are the kind of people that RFK is in bed with.
Trump also is a vehicle for Israeli influence through his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who was the son of a major Zionist donor, Charles Kushner, who is very close to Netanyahu. And this has been reported in the New York Times. When Jared Kushner was a boy, Benjamin Netanyahu, he was opposition leader of Likud. And after meetings with AIPAC and various bigwigs, Netanyahu would stay at the Kushner's home, and Jared would have to get out of his bed, and Netanyahu would sleep in Jared Kushner's bed. So Trump's son-in-law is literally in bed with Netanyahu.
Isn't this wild, guys? I know Janine said he's telling all the good tea. Isn't this wild? So you see the relationship between Donald Trump's family, like the Trumps, and Netanyahu. You see how all these people are connected?
Trump's ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, who called me the biggest anti-Semite in the world. I guess I'll take it as a badge of honor. I call him the reciprocal ambassador, U.S. Israeli ambassador. He is someone who is on the board of, actually oversees the Bet El Foundation, which is the foundation, the charitable foundation for an illegal ultra-nationalist settlement in the occupied West Bank. This is a U.S. diplomat, and he's been overseeing the attempt to dislodge UPenn's administration because they are not anti-Palestinian enough. Sheldon Adelson has been the leading donor to Donald Trump. Just look at Donald Trump rolling out the Abraham Accords, and Jared Kushner is over his shoulder. Netanyahu's in the front row, and to his left was Sheldon Adelson, casino baron, and along with his wife, Miriam. It's not the only candidate that he exerts influence on in this campaign.
Pause for a second. What I liked about this, what he did, even though he went there to speak about Israel and Gaza, I like the fact that Max was able to tie it into the 2024 presidential election, because he's speaking to college kids and he's basically trying to get them to see how, listen, especially here in Massachusetts, it's blue state, right? Listen, both Biden and Trump are in bed with the Israeli lobby, and just literally how close they are to some of these political officials, right? So it was really smart that Max did that he's making the connection. Like, I'm just here to let you guys know, at the end of the day, Biden and Trump are both pro-Israel. And then he brings in RFK Jr. This was an actually good idea.
RFK Jr. has come out with a very strong, we could call it pro-Israel line. It's essentially a genocidal line filled with misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation, as they call it. Baron, and along with his wife, Miriam. It's not the only candidate that he exerts influence on in this campaign. RFK Jr. has come out with a very strong, we could call it pro-Israel line. It's essentially a genocidal line filled with misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation, as they call it.
Yes. RFK Jr., dude, if you follow the RFK Jr. videos on Twitter, RFK Jr. is lying through his teeth about Israel. Lying through his teeth. He's making up things that don't make any damn sense. I don't even know how he's able to keep the lies straight at this point in time. This is why I think he didn't want to debate Max Blumenthal, although he said that he would and he decided not to. Lying through his teeth. It is really, really bad and really cringe, man.
He had agreed to debate me and pulled back from that. And one thing I really wanted to ask him about was his relationship with the Adelsons and with Shmuley Boteach, this reality show rabbi who you've all seen stoking anti-Semitism by his sheer existence. Well, Shmuley is the Adelsons' bag man. Shmuley courted RFK after RFK made comments that the vaccine had possibly been, that COVID had been possibly engineered to exempt Asian and Ashkenazi Jewish people from getting infected.
Yeah, when he made that statement. So you guys remember he made that statement, it was at some dinner party or whatever, and then everybody kind of like lost it.
Private dinner, which was, someone from the New York Post recorded that. RFK gets in trouble. Shmuley starts attacking him as an anti-Semite. Then RFK meets with Shmuley, and Shmuley says, look, we can make this whole problem go away. You just do an event with me, and we help you out a little bit. We're going to feed you the script. And all of a sudden, RFK appears as even more hardcore, more Netanyahu than Netanyahu.
Now, remember, that happened before October 7th. So RFK Jr. came out like staunchly pro-Israel to the point that it seemed like he was acting like it was obvious. It was a script. It was over the top, like ridiculous, right out of nowhere. And that was before October 7th. Then October 7th happened. Then the protest happened. And that kind of put RFK Jr. in the hot seat, especially someone that was running on, favoring free speech and anti-censorship. Kind of makes you look some kind of way when people realize you're really not in favor of free speech. This is why they're trying to change definitions of some of these words and what they really mean so that they can say, well, no, that doesn't apply to free speech. So RFK Jr. has exposed his whole ass.
He's accused, says the Palestinian Authority has a pay to slay policy and they pay you to kill a Jew anywhere in the world. Recently, very below the radar, RFK Jr. finally did an event where he was on stage with world-renowned philanthropist Miriam Adelson to raise money for Shmuley Boteach's security detail. So it's clear what's going on here. And so Trump is supposed to be the lead figure in the America First movement. America First is all about American sovereignty, protecting our borders, not getting embroiled in unnecessary foreign conflicts. Most of the America Firsters correctly opposed the $65 billion in aid to Ukraine, which was just money washing for all of the defense firms, the weapons contractors, and was designed to prolong a fruitless war. But they all wound up supporting the Israel aid, which was attached to it. So by the time this vote came to Congress, Donald Trump was found strategizing with Lindsey Graham, the ultimate neocon in the Senate, who said that America First is actually about giving all of our money to all of these other countries to project American strength. America First basically died on April 20th when Donald Trump, Lindsey Graham, and Speaker Mike Johnson collaborated to give all of this money away to other countries whose interests diverge deeply from the real interests, including the imperial interests of the US. That date will be more harmful to Donald Trump among his own base than January 6th was. However, we're seeing contradictions in American nationalism emerge. Figures like Candace Owens, a key Trump influencer who was flown by Sheldon Adelson to the inauguration of the moving of the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, has split with Netanyahu's top podcast influencer in the US, Ben Shapiro, and wound up hosting Norman Finkelstein for an hour-long talk to just learn more about Palestine. Is very interesting. And what it came down to was that she had had 4 children and became disgusted with all of these images of children being killed. It's affecting them too, to the extent that they can get over their partisan brainwashing and tap into their own humanity. Tucker Carlson, immediately after October, the top pro-Trump influencer, immediately after October 7th, warned of war with Iran. War with Iran does not, in his view, and in the view of American nationalists, does not advance American interests or the values of America first. And later, he noticed that Palestinian Christians exist, something that many American nationalists do not know.
This is another big one that really gets me, is that a lot of people assume that all Palestinians are Muslim. It's really interesting. This is why you have to find these things out for yourself. You have to do your own research. There are Palestinian Christians. There are also Palestinian Jews, right? So when you hear Americans say that, like, well, they're all Muslim and they're not well informed, and they haven't done their own research.
That, for example, St. Porphyrius Church, which dates back to the 5th century AD, was under siege by the Israelis, was having its parishioners killed by Israeli snipers. He was watching that, and he decided to host Munter Isaac, a reverend of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Bethlehem, who is known for his deeply moving sermon on Easter, Christ in the Rubble. Watch that interview. It was 45 minutes. That was a complete demolition of the logic of Zionism and a major blow to the Islamophobia industry by simply presenting another kind of Palestinian who was living among Muslims in harmony, and whose community in Bethlehem was being destroyed by US-backed Zionism. So we need to encourage these contradictions. These are beneficial contradictions for this movement. And so I'll leave it to you to ponder that. I'm not going to offer any advice here. But it's obviously the Democrats who deserve the most disdain, because they're the biggest hypocrites, because they're the ones who take you for granted. They're the ones who say that they're for diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, and they're the ones who ultimately are ensuring that Palestinians DIE.
That was a good one there. So I can't show the entire thing, guys, but definitely watch the full speech on the gray zone. It's really good. So you notice what he's doing here. He's calling out the Democratic Party in my state here of Massachusetts, which is a blue state. Very brave thing to do. Very brave thing to do. There are not too many. I mean, there are Republicans here, but the state is overwhelmingly blue. Just keep it real, right? But he's telling these kids, like, hey, there are other options. There are other things that you can do. You can vote for a third party candidate out there, or independent candidate out there that does have the correct position when it comes to Israel and Gaza. That is going to be on the ballot, or is on multiple ballots, right? So I thought it was really great how he kind of added this to the discussion, because what he's doing is he's telling these kids who are really passionate about the Palestinian cause, he's telling them, when you go to vote in November, if you're voting for Biden or Trump, you're voting for genocide. That's what he's doing. This was very smart. A lot of people, if they had to give a speech about Israel and Gaza at a college, they probably wouldn't have added the electoralism to it. So that was smart. You can watch the full video on the gray zone, but I'll show you what our politicians are actually doing, because they're just silly and ridiculous. Oh, did I not put it there? Oh, I go to it on Twitter. I want to show you what our politicians are doing, right? This is what we have to worry about in DC, because they're not having serious discussions right now. And I think some of you have seen this. Let me try to pull it up. If you haven't seen it, this debate here. Yeah. This is what our politicians, when we clip this, Corey, can you cut out that part? And thanks. This is what our politicians are doing. This is what they're arguing about right now.
I'd like to know if any of the Democrats on this committee are employing Judge Merchan's daughter.
Please tell me what that has to do with Merrick Garland.
Is she a porn star?
Oh, Goldman. That's right. He's advising. Okay.
He's advising who? What? Do you know what we're here for? You know we're here about
just
AG.
I don't
Point
think
of-
you
point
know
of
what
order.
you're here
President.
for.
Well, you the one talking about. I guess
I
you still
think your
stuck in the
fake
courtroom.
eyelashes are messing up.
No,
what you're
ain't
reading.
nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Mr.
Chairman,
That's beneath
would
even
you
your
please
history and
regain
beneath
order
even
of your
you.
committee?
Order.
I do have a point of order, and I would like to move to take down Ms. Green's words. That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you
meeting
attack
will
the
suspend.
physical
Meeting will
appearance of another
suspend.
person?
Are your
Move
feelings hurt?
her words down.
Aw.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Oh, really?
Don't even play. with
Baby
me.
girl? I don't
We
think
are going to
so.
move, and we're going to take your words down.
I
Thank you very
second that motion.
So who will have to fail? Okay. Ms. Green agrees to strike her words.
I believe she
Chair
needs to apologize.
recognizes
No.
Mr.
She
Perry.
needs to
Okay,
apologize.
hold on. Then after Mr. Perry's going to be recognized, then Ms. Green
I'm not
has 4 minutes and
apologizing.
21
Well, then
seconds.
Okay,
you're not
reserve the right to
striking your
object.
words.
I am
Mr.
not
Perry.
apologizing.
Now let's go. Come on, guys.
Why don't you debate me?
Mr. Chairman, the
it's
minority.
pretty
No,
self-evident.
You're not.
Yeah, you're not-
out of order.
you don't have enough
You're out of order.
intelligence.
Chair recognizes Mr. Perry.
Okay, move to strike
I'd like to
I
strike
move to
those
strike the
words
lady's
as well.
I move to
I would
strike-
like to
Order.
strike
Strike
those
the
as
lady's
well.
words again.
That's 2 requests to strike. That's 2 requests to strike.
Oh, they cannot take the
There's
words.
another motion to strike her words again. Please
All right.
get
Okay.
your members under
Here's the
control.
correct priority. Ms. Green, do you agree to unanimous consent to strike your words?
I repeat again for the second time. Yes, I'll
All
strike
right.
my words,
That-
but I'm not
all right.
apologizing.
Without objection. Without
Not
objection.
apologizing.
21 seconds.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Who's
It's me.
Ms. Crockett?
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold on.
part
I'm
of
trying
it.
to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to
I had
strike
no
those
idea
words.
what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just.
You just voted to do
Y'all did
it.
it first, so you
You
don't
just
talk about
voted
it.
to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get
Okay.
clarification.
Look at, calm down.
No, because this
I
is
would
what
like to
y'all
get
do.
through proceeding.
So I'm trying
Hey,
to get
Ms.
clarification.
Crockett, you're not
Y'all wanna
recognized.
play
Ms.
games?
I can't hear
Crockett.
you with your
And
yelling.
you don't want
Calm
me to
down.
Be,
Can
no,
you please calm
don't
down?
tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all
Please
talk
calm
noise,
down.
and then you
You're
can't
out of
take
control.
Because if
Look,
I
Chairman,
come
can we
and
send
talk
outside to
shit
take a
about
break
her,
for 5
y'all
minutes?
gonna have a
Mr.
problem.
Chairman, Mr.
Order.
Chairman.
All right,
Sorry.
Chair.
I don't know why
Okay.
you're
Order.
acting
Chair
like
now
that.
recognizes.
These are the people running the country. This is what our politicians are doing. There's an actual genocide going on, and this is what they're doing. Talking about eyelashes, bleach blonde hair, oh girl, baby girl. Think about it. This is what they're doing. Do they represent you?